Testing your gold. In the last section, I briefly explained how to test gold. Now I'm going to take you through the process. In order to complete this process, you will need a strong magnet, a jewelry loupe, an acid test kit, or a thermo-electronic device. Step 1. Make sure you have gold. The first thing you'll need to do is to take out your magnet and see if you have gold. One of the two things will happen. Either the item will be attracted to the magnet or it won't be. Gold is not attracted to magnets. That being said, you do have to make sure that you don't have a gold item with some non-gold pieces. For instance, if the item is attracted to the magnet, make sure it doesn't have a steel clasp or anything else that could cause it to be attracted to the magnet. If the item isn't attracted to the magnet, there's a good chance you have gold. At that point, you'll be ready to move on to the next step. Step 2. Use your jeweler's loupe. Next, you'll need to take out your jeweler's loupe and look for stamps on the gold. First, you want to check for a stamp that indicates the item is gold-plated or gold-filled. The item is gold-plated or filled if it has one of the following stamps: GP or gold plate, HGE, heavy gold electroplate, RGP, rolled gold plate, GF, gold filled. Gold-plated refers to items that have a very thin layer of gold on the outside. The gold adheres to another metal. The other metal makes up most of the item. Gold filled is very similar to gold-plated, but it does contain more gold. In order for an item to be gold-filled, it has to contain at least 1/20th gold. You don't want to buy gold-filled or gold-plated items. Thus, if you see any of the marks that indicate an item is gold-filled or gold-plated, pass it up. Next, you'll need to look for a carat stamp. As I mentioned earlier, a carat stamp is just a starting point when determining gold's purity. That being said, the stamp will help you when you start your purity test. With that in mind, use your jeweler's loupe to find the carat stamp. If it doesn't have a stamp, it might still be gold, so you will still need to test it. Finally, you want to look for the jeweler's stamp so you can find out if you have a valuable piece. For instance, if you see a Tiffany & Co. stamp on the jewelry, you know you'll have a good retail value. See if the jewelry has a stamp. Keep in mind that stamps can be counterfeited, though, so you will need to make sure the jewelry has the right level of purity for that item. Step 3. Determine gold's purity. You can determine gold's purity, example carats, by conducting an acid test or using a thermo-electronic device. I'm going to go over how to use an acid tester. If you decide to use a thermo-electronic device, follow the instructions provided by the manufacturer. Using an acid tester. First, put on protective goggles and gloves. Then open up your acid testing kit. An acid testing kit comes with a stone, testing keys, and different acids. Pull out the acid and key that corresponds to the gold you want to test for. For instance, if you saw a mark for 14K gold on the item, you will pull out the acid and the key for 14 gold. If you didn't see a mark, I would still recommend pulling out the acid and key for 14K gold, since it's the most common kind of gold. Scrape the key against a stone. Then scrape the jewelry against a stone. When you are finished, you should have 2 lines. Shake the acid up gently and then pour it on the scrapes. If you can still see the marks, you know the gold is at least as pure as what you tested for. Thus, if you tested for 14 karat gold and you can see the marks after you apply the acid, and then you know the gold is at least 14 karat, you can then select the next acid to see if you can still see the marks. If you can see the marks, you know it's not pure. Thus, you will have to pick the next acid down and run your test again. Be sure you show your customer the acid test if the gold isn't as pure as he thinks. Also replace the acid every 6 months.